Okay, so we're going to try to create an interactive Flash animation, and you can see the demo of it in the class notes right now. The dog goes woof, and the cat goes meow. The bird goes, and the mouse goes. You get the idea. So we're going to build this thing from scratch and show you how the bits and pieces are put together, and you'll learn a little action script and button creation along the way. Hope we can do this briefly enough. When you start out with Flash, we're going to start with an actionscript 2 Flash file because it's a simple form of ActionScript, and it's what all my notes are based around. I'd love to move on to ActionScript 3, but I want to keep things as simple as possible for now. And then the next thing is, well, we're just going to start creating scenes. So the first part of this is making sure we have enough scenes to hold all the bits and pieces that we want. You'll notice that you got the word scene right there, and we can open up more scenes or create more scenes by going down through Window to Other Panels and finding Scene. And memorize Shift F2. That's an easy way of bringing up the scene palette. And I like to dock that scene palette down here so I always have access to it. Just drag it down to the bottom until you see a little blue glow down there. And now let's see. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start by just typing some text here. And it's not going to be pretty. Just going to work as quickly as I can. I'll type "the dog says" in the first scene. Says. That's my obligatory typo. And I'll go modify the text so it's nice and big. And I'm going to try to set this up well for the start because we're going to start cloning this scene to make the other parts, and then all the text will line up really nicely. I've also got it aligned to the center here. Okay, so you're used to this. We have one layer. It is going to hold our text. I'm going to build another layer on top, and it's going to hold actions. And if you've already done the stop exercise, you've already done a simple action, an action script called stop, and I'm going to put it in right now. So when we start this movie, the first thing it's going to do is stop on this scene. To put it in, I'll hit F9. F9 brings up the actions window, and right now, because we selected the frame, this is where the action is going to live. And the action we want is going to be a global function timeline control stop. And so far, we're done. And I'm going to just turn that off with an F9. So the dog says, that's where it's starting. Now we're going to need to make a scene to hold what the dog says. So to make a scene, I'm going to go down to the scene, now that I've got everything else all set up, and I've got a choice. I could make a brand new scene by just clicking this little new scene button, and you'll notice scene 2 pops up, and it also indicates we're in scene 2 over here, scene 2. You can go back and navigate using the scene palette very easily. In this case, though, I'm going to trash that scene because I got an easier way to do this than just making one from scratch. I'm going to clone it using this button here. It's called duplicate scene. If I click it, scene 1 copy has the exact same content as what was there before. And in this particular case, I'd like to change a little bit of what's going on here. First of all, I'm going to call this dog, and you can name these scenes any way you like. And inside the dog, I'd like to put a picture of a dog, so I think I have a picture of a dog here I'm going to use. I'm just going to copy that image, and I wonder if it's as easy as just going to the text or content area and pasting it. Control V. Yeah, there's that dog. Dog's a little big right now, so I'll use the transform key and hold the shift key as I shrink it down so it stays in proportion. It'll be a little bit smaller so we don't have too much conflict. And you can have this thing overlap a little. I'm going to right mouse click, arrange, and send this to the back so the text stays over top of it, just like that. So there's our first scene. That's dog. I might want to do the same thing and create one for cat. Easy enough. I'll hit the clone, type cat, and get rid of this picture. And if only I had a good picture of a cat. Of course I have a good picture of a cat. Right mouse click, copy the image, go back to Flash, and in this case I better change the text to cat says. You get the idea. I'll paste this one in, use the transform tool, holding the shift as I shrink a corner point. It'll shrink down to a nice convenient size. Yeah, I can actually make it a little bit bigger. And if you want the text to overlap, remember to right mouse click, arrange, and I'm going to send this object to the back so the Y comes over top of it. So now we got 3 scenes, 1, 2, 3. Now what we want to do is we want to create some interactive buttons that takes us to the individual scenes, and that's pretty easy too. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to start by choosing a color. I choose to make one that is blue. Now there's a ton of buttons that are already made for you under Windows Common Library Buttons, but I wanted to show you how you can make them from scratch, so you can make them look any way you want. I'm going to choose a nice round color. Whoops, lost my color. Choose a nice round shape. There we go. And I'm going to draw a button. And maybe my button will be about here, perhaps. Now this is just an ordinary circle, but we can turn it into something marvelous by converting it into a symbol. So modify, convert to symbol, or F8. And when you do, in the past we've just been happy with movie clips. Now we're going to go to the next type, which is called button. And I'm going to give this the name button and say OK. And when you do that, you'll notice in your library you now have a button. I've got two bitmaps. Those are the copied dog and cat pictures that I had before too. But now I got myself a button. The button isn't too exciting right now. If you double click it, you can make it more spectacular. I'll zoom in on it too. If you wanted to give it an overstate and a downstate, so when you hover over it, it does something different, hit F6 in the overstate and just change its color. I would suggest something that is a lighter version of the same color. You want to give it a downstate, F6 again in the down, click, and I'm going to make this go white when I click on it. Okay. Now I'll go back to the main scene, and I'm going to test the movie just to see if it's working so far. All it's going to do is just hover there, but when I hover over it, great, turns to a different color. When I click it, it goes white. Nice. But the stop was working perfectly, and it stays on that first scene. So now I'm going to go back, as I'm back on the scene, now I'm going to give it some superpowers. I'm going to hook up some script to that button so it takes me to dog. And doing that is not too hard. Now we bring up the actions palette again. That's the F9 key. So there's the actions. Notice there's nothing in there right now because we're clicking on the button. If we click on the frame, it shows us what's in the frame. If we click on the button, this is with the select tool, we can see there's nothing in there yet. So to make a button work, you need to put in two sets of commands. The first one is a movie clip control, and it's called on. Double click it, and it gives you the choice of all these things that you can do with the button. You can press, or you can roll over it, or you can drag out of it. We're going for release. It's a good format to use and very reliable to trigger a button. Next, we're going to go outside the curly bracket and hit the enter key once. And now we're going to decide what happens when we hit that button and release it. And the answer here is we would like to go to and stop. Go to and stop will go to any location we want, and it shows you two different formats here. I'm going to go to and stop to a specific scene and a specific frame. And the specific scene that I want to put in there is going to be dog. And to put the name dog in there, you start with a quotation mark, spell it exactly as you spelled it here. Typos are the #1 reason these things don't work right. And to designate the frame, well, it's going to be comma and 1. And that should do it. There's an extra space in here. I'm just going to hit the backspace once, so we have a nice tidy bit of code. That code is all you need. I'll hit F9, get rid of it, and I'm going to try testing my movie one more time. So the dog says, click on this. Takes us here. I thought I changed this to say cat, though. We better go check that. So we go to the dog. Oh yeah, I didn't change that here. Cat says. And over here, no, it shouldn't say the cat says. It should say the bird says. So there's the whole deal. This is how scenes are created. This is how buttons are made interactive. And if you wanted to set up the rest of these things for dog and cat, like, it gets very, very simple. I'm going to zoom in on this again. This behaves like a symbol, but it's, again, really a button. You can check the properties and see how it's behaving. If you need a copy of this so that you can randomly access the cat, the mouse, or whatever else you might want to build into this thing, you can just right mouse click, copy, right mouse click, and paste. And it actually puts it in a nice line like this too. And in fact, if you go Control V, no, it doesn't work that way. That's too bad. Oh, I know what it is. It's duplicate. There's something called Edit Duplicate, which is really nice. So if I'm going to undo this one step. Control D. If you start putting these things like one after the other, they'll go in a nice straight line for you too. I'm going to do that right now. I'll click this. Control D duplicates. I'm going to move this where I want it to go. I think it works this way anyway. And then Control D again. It doesn't do what I want. That's too bad. Well, I'll just duplicate about 4 of these things to get started. And you can always align these things with a nice little Align tab up here. Align. And I'm going to have these things aligned to distribute the space from their center points, so they're evenly located. Oh, that didn't work well. Undo. I realized I had two stage turned on. I don't want to align it across the entire stage. I just want to align them equally here. So that sets them up. And I'll align their center points here. And then as far as labels, putting labels over top of those things, you can always put text on top of them. There's some white text. I'm just going to say probably about a 9 or 10 point woof. We'll go here. And the button will still work underneath. And I'm going to use another little trick to duplicate something. I'm holding down the control key as I move it and holding down the shift key to keep it going in a straight line. So I can put labels on this really fast. And this will be meow. Eventually I'm going to get around to making a tweet. And maybe even a squeak. Hope I spelled squeak right. Now, hooking up the action script to these things, you can click on each of these buttons and notice we still have the code. When it duplicated the button, it also duplicated the code that went with it. So I can change this really easily to say cat. And even though it doesn't exist yet, I can click on this one and I can make another one here and I say Goto and Stop. Oh yeah, it's going to be bird eventually. And this one is eventually going to say mouse. Now, those buttons won't work because there is no scene yet, but you get the idea how you can build this thing up. Oh, one more thing that you might want to do to make things a little more fun. Be nice when we went to the dog if we could actually hear something go woof. So I'm going to go get some woof and put it in there. If I click on this frame, this is where I'm going to build the woof sound. And I'm going to go edit. Excuse me, I'm going to go file, import, and import to stage. It may or may not work. I've got a bunch of sounds that you can access on the handouts folder in our school. You could also download these things from the internet, put them in your own server space, and build them in. But if you go taking a look under Data 1, Docs, Handout, that's Handouts folder, May, and Assets. Right in the May, you've got an Assets folder called Audio. Audio is a bunch of audio samples that you can use instead of having to go look for them. There's a lot of them here, and they're already categorized. And if you go into animals, you'll find a bunch of dogs already exist there. Perhaps a vicious dog 3 would be appropriate. So I'll say, OK, open. And there should be a sound in there, but I don't think it is in there. So I'm going to go back to the library and see if I can find it. There it is. And as I want to put it in that keyframe, I'll just drag it right there. You know if it's working because you should see a little sound sample. Or I'll stretch this out so you can actually see it. You know what, I might want to edit that sound too so that the growl really happens right there. So I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to edit the sound by clicking on the properties of that frame. And I will customize the effect with that little pencil tool. And I'm going to grab the center slider and make sure the sound starts right about there, and I'll leave off that opening bit. So now if I test the movie, let's just see if it works. Hopefully you can hear this on the recording. Yeah, that works well. Okay. Good luck, ladies and gentlemen. Give it a whirl. See if you can build the whole thing up, and of course you can try to find a place to put a fox in there too if you get the chance. Bye for now.